Singapore and Malaysia, kawan-kawan, right? Not just kawan-kawan, we visit each other like so often.
Hello and welcome to another episode of OCBC Wealth in Focus. Today we have a special guest, Bank of Singapore Chief Investment Officer Jean Chia is with us here today. Jean, thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Jean, we are at the middle of the year and the first 6 months was nothing as usual, right? Nobody expected that we will have a war that started so abruptly and nobody can be sure if it has ended now. I guess only you perhaps can share with us a better perspective or your perspective for the next 6 months in 2026. You know, what will be the global outlook, right? In your view, how will it happen?
You know, as they say, right, the only certainty is uncertainty these days. So indeed, you know, as we started the year, these were not events that we had forecast, and rightly so. I think the US-Iran war, like you pointed out, really came as a surprise for the market and also for many countries, indeed, including not just the Middle East, but the massive repercussions that had for the rest of the world. And that really demonstrated to us that there are vulnerabilities in the global economy, but also in the whole state of play all over the world. And the main issue, of course, was the choke point of the Strait of Hormuz. And then what happened thereafter is the consequent impact on oil price, which really affects all of us, including here in Malaysia and everywhere else in Asia as well, you know, being many countries very, very dependent on oil imports, especially the whole of Asia. That, of course, has a lot of impact on us from an inflation standpoint and consequently on the macroeconomic outlook for the year. So, but, you know, it is a very short 6 months, but we've also seen oil price go through the entire gamut in terms of volatility.
All the way to 120
and then now back where we started, right? So I think it really goes to show that we have to be prepared as investors for all sorts of scenarios. And gone are the days that we can predict, you know, what is the GDP forecast for the year, inflation forecast of the year.
We tried our best.
We try our best.
Nobody knows that rockets would fly, you know, on a Saturday afternoon.
Exactly. So I think we also then have to calibrate the way that we invest going forward with that in mind. That is the backdrop that we operate on. That uncertainty is a base case now. And then also to be prepared within the portfolio to have those ballast, if you like, you know, the balancing act in the portfolios, not just to go all risk on or all risk off, but really to calibrate your portfolio so that come what may, we are prepared.
So Jean, I think, right, the smartest investor in the room, they always tend to play the long game.
Yes.
Right? It's not a 3 months, 6 months things. And I know that BOS talk a lot about Supertrends, things that you believe it has high conviction on for the long term. So can you tell us a little bit about the BOS Supertrend?
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to look at the long term in investing because it's very easy to be distracted by the short term noise, especially now with, you know, the short term daily developments. And does that mean we have to adjust our portfolio every day? No, clearly not. So this is really encapsulated in the 5 Oriental elements, 金木水火土, right? So with the 5 elements, we've actually portrayed the 5 key trends that we believe will shape the next 5 years in terms of not just economies, but also markets and even our daily lives. The first is really something that has been demonstrated in full this year, which is choke points. And how are we going to navigate choke points? Choke points take the form of course, oil being the most obvious that we have experienced, trade. But actually, if you remember, rare earths was a choke point as well, and water can be a choke point. So there's many vulnerabilities in our global economy and also companies. So in our investment horizon in the future, we do have to take note of this sort of choke points that could affect geopolitics, the resilience of economies and also of our portfolios. The second is really also on the AI trend, right? I mean, I'm sure all of you, especially
everybody is talking about it.
Everybody talks about AI, but you know, we've characterized it as AI is anything, everywhere, and all at once, right? Whether in our personal lives, in our business, in our families, and in our countries, AI has become ubiquitous. And it affects not just, it's not just about semiconductors or chips or, platforms and hyperscalers. It's also beginning to be adopted in regular businesses, right? Our traditional businesses, and evolving and also increasing productivity, affecting potentially the way that we operate as companies and businesses as well. So we do think that AI is no longer just a trend, and it's also not all positive. There will be AI enablers, but there'll also be disruptors and disrupted companies. Yeah. So that's two of the key trends. Of course, more strategically from a Asia perspective, we do think that investing in Asia, China is a very big part of the global economy, and China is undergoing a form of renaissance, if you like, in terms of how the economy is evolving, how culturally as well as from a business and technological perspective, China is emerging as a very important player in that environment, and that is also one of the key trends. The one that none of us can get away with is longevity.
All right.
I mean, aging is something that we can't fight, but at the same time, there's a lot to be optimistic about. We're living longer, but living better as we age.
Much longer, right?
Yes. So it is not out of our sort of expectations to live till 100, for instance. Now, that, of course, brings with it the positive aspects, our spending power, our ability to be very healthy and very productive long into beyond our 60s and 70s. And at the same time, there are implications for economies, because governments will have to contend with potentially longer lifespans.
Yep.
And maybe however, on the flip side, with the demographic changes, the tax-paying population may also be smaller relative to the aging population. So how are we adjusting ourselves in terms of the wealth economy and wealth management, which is really good for our business, is to ensure that the way we invest also takes into account the fact that we'll have longer lives, and wealth management becomes very important for the longer term as well. So these are some of the key trends that we think are very important for investors.
Jean, you spoke about the super trend just now, right? So this is how, my question is, how do we balance between growth, and risk management, right? So we have to have a long-term view in what we invest, but then there's also the day-to-day, the rockets, the war and whatnot that makes the market very volatile. So how does an investor construct a portfolio to weather that kind of situation?
Really, I think it is ultimately about planning, strategizing. So at Bank of Singapore and OCBC, we do believe strongly in strategic asset allocation as the starting point. And once you have that in place, it is then easier to cut off the noise, but also respond with agility. So first of all, plan the portfolio in its allocation towards bonds, equities, alternatives, as well as the ballast in the portfolio. And diversification is the key, because we can't necessarily predict the future, as you have rightly pointed out, whether in a short or slightly longer run. So all the more we need to ensure that the portfolio is resilient enough to weather these short-term volatility, but at the same time be ready to be served for the long run.
Jean, when we look at the world today, we can see whether it's the Middle East, whether it's US, China, we can see countries are becoming more inward-looking, they are building walls. But for our countries, Malaysia and Singapore, we are just doing the direct opposite, right? Instead of building walls, we are tearing them down. We are building an MRT to transport like 10,000 people every other hours to each island. And so what do you think, right? In your perspective as CIO, between Malaysia and Singapore, do you think this is something great that we are building in the next 5-10 years? What is your view on the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity for our region, Singapore, Malaysia, as well as the broader ASEAN region. It's just a fantastic opportunity for us from a geopolitical standpoint. The more sort of uncertainty there is in the broader world, actually our region plays a very important part. And certainly, Singapore and Malaysia, kawan-kawan, right? not just kawan-kawan, we visit each other like so often that it almost feels, like you say, like one big family. And even in the AI ecosystem, I think I just want to highlight that as a very positive example. It's being talked about what Sijori means, right? Singapore, Johor, and the Riau Islands. I think together it's such a great, I'll say, kind of ecosystem that we can be built, whether it's in data centers, it's in the technology aspects of what AI could mean for our region. But at the same time, it also means that for the broader economy, there's so much to be gained from the developments across in terms of transfer of technology, of know-how, and in attracting FDIs across from all around the world.
It's not just between Malaysia and Singapore,
exactly.
right? It is also inviting the rest of the world to join us.
Yes, so bringing the world to our region and our region contributing to the rest of Asia and even globally. I think this is such an exciting time for us as a region that I really hope that, not just us in our industry, but across all the industries in Singapore, Malaysia, and ASEAN, we will benefit from these developments.
I do feel that in the next 5 or 10 years, it's going to be really exciting for both our countries. And that's really the direct opposite of what any other region are doing right now. Jean, my last question, not to put you on the spot.
I'm scared.
Yeah, but I feel that you are the CIO, so you have your own perspective. And sometimes when we say one thing and it's against the world, it's against consensus, and we turn out right, we feel a little bit good about ourselves. So is there anything in your mind, right, that you can think of that broadly people think that is to the left, but you feel that maybe that's not the right direction?
Okay, I think there's something very close to my heart, which is sustainability. I think indeed the world has turned a little bit away from it, right? Whether in the West and certain perhaps areas in the world that perhaps this has become a lower priority. I think that's not correct because the planet waits for no one, right? The climate change is still happening and will continue to get more and more serious as we approach the next few years, whether it's 2030 or 2050 as the target. Now, I do think it's still a very key priority for us as individuals, as investors, and also as countries and companies. We all have a role to play. Strong believer of the triple bottom line, right? At the end of the day, what is profit if we live in a warming planet that we can no longer survive in? So I do think that we still need to prioritize this climate change as a key risk, but also as a key opportunity for some of our companies. So, even despite what the world may say about energy, and we've seen the vulnerability of higher oil prices and what that can do to companies as well as countries, I do think that this whole push towards renewable energy is going to be important, whether it's in new technological advances in alternative sources of energy. At the same time, also climate change and also protecting the biodiversity of Asia, right? We happen to live in one of these really most important carbon sinks around the world, especially here in Malaysia. I think, you have such a rich natural resource. We are in the midst of this rich resource that we should really protect and ensure that our future generations can not just enjoy the biodiversity that we have here in our region, but also protect our economies from the potential risks that come about.
It's very much like what is happening in some parts of the world now, like India, for example. They are having record heat waves, and that is affecting the economy because certain companies cannot function like how they used to do. Construction work has to be done in the evening, etc. So that's what you meant to.
Yeah, and crops, right? Crop yield, food, these are all important essentials for our future. And I think that while we sit here in Southeast Asia with such a rich heritage as well as such rich resources, it's our duty, right, as individuals and as business owners, as investors, to really push that agenda forward, despite what the rest of the world may think. So that's my anti-consensus call.
That's all the time we have today. Jean, thank you so much for taking the time to fly down to Bangsa and do this with me.
45 minutes, okay lah.
If 45 minutes is not too long. Maybe, when 2027 comes in January, I will also want to invite you to give us, the 2027 global outlook again. And for those of you watching, thank you so much for your time. Please stay tuned for the next episode of OCBC Wealth in Focus. I'm Andrew, and this has been a pleasure.
Thank you.